Hello and welcome YouTube to If You Don't Know, Get to Know with an absolute magnificent guest who has done it all in the world of football. He is now the founder of Football CFB. We will be digesting all of that with my special guest Callum. Firstly, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, and I'm delighted to be on the show. I've been watching your channel a lot recently, Kevin Campbell, James Rowe, and others, and I'm just delighted to be asked. I'm being honest. I'm delighted to be here.
No, honestly, it's been an honor. Like, obviously, with this whole show, the concept is allowing people, because I've always been an advocate of giving back in a different way. It's not all about giving back money, but it's experience from other people, people who are in the industry doing their thing. And obviously, when I was younger, I never knew football could be something you can consider a career other than becoming a player. And then you can think elsewhere, as in becoming managers, coaches, referees, etc. I never knew you didn't need to actually play football to become a football content creator. And I guess what I first do is, where can they find you? Obviously, I have put everything in the description in terms of all the links to Football CFB, is Talking Guru, I think it is, and the Beyond the Post media. I put all of that in the description, so if you did want to check it out. And obviously, Callum's Twitter is obviously on the banner there as well. And what do you do, and how did you kind of get into football, and why football?
In terms of getting into football, it was just something that was when I was younger. It was the game that everybody played at school, as simple as that. So I was actually I say quite late. I got into football probably. Really got into it probably primary two, we call it up here, so probably about the age of 7 years old, whereas there'd been some kids obviously had been playing football since nursery, I suppose. But I just got into it because when I went to school, the school I went to had a bit of a big patch of grass, so to speak, round the back, and in the mornings when you would go in, I mean, back then, I mean, it's changed now. Kids arrive later, I think, to school, and they want to just get in and get on with it. But we used to arrive at 8:15. We started at 9, and every morning you'd be playing either five-a-sides, or you'd be playing a game where you had one goalkeeper and everyone was sort of competing for themselves, like a World Cup sort of tournament. We called it Worldy, but maybe people called it World Cup or Cuppies or whatever they call it, wherever you're listening. Yeah. And that's the sort of thing that we used to do. And for me, playing the game at school, it really helped spark my interest longer term. Obviously, my family members, I've got an interesting family split. My dad's side of the family were all Rangers fans. My mum's side of the family were all Celtic fans. So my mum and dad split when I was 2. I grew up in my mum's side of the family. So by common courtesy, there I was a Celtic fan. And then obviously my dad came back into my life as I through sort of primary school, going into high school. Morton's our hometown club. He used to take me there because he wouldn't take me to Celtic games, and my mum wouldn't let me go to Rangers games. So we would go to our hometown club, Morton, but also my dad spent a period of time working down in England, and he loved Manchester United because of Sir Alex Ferguson. And the sort of Scottish connection that you had at Manchester United with the likes of Arthur Elbiston, Gordon Strachan, Gordon McQueen. Obviously, there's many more, Dennis Law, the further back you go, but he loved that Scottish connection. And Manchester United's also been a big part of my life. And some people listening might say, "Oh, you've got more clubs than Tiger Woods," but I've heard all those insults before. I just love football, and whether it's a game in the Scottish Premiership, or it's a game in the Portuguese League or the Premier League in England or France, if it's on TV at this moment when we can't go to matches, I'll watch it, because I just think football for me is just the most amazing sport, and it's one of the most amazing things. It's given me so much. So I just love the game, playing it, watching it, you name it. I just love football.
No, I'm the same. I watch different leagues. I've got, when people start to hear, "Oh, you support Barcelona as well. Oh, you support Inter Milan as well," I go, "You can say that. No, I just really follow them, and I have done for a very long time." And it's quite an interesting topic, that, like, having multiple teams. But I just like watching different leagues, and you can't get invested unless you're invested in a team in there. And I tried to diversify it. Arsenal and Barcelona, like you said, obviously with the Scottish links with United, Arsenal, Barca, especially when I've been alive, they've been exchanging players like nobody's business, with Sanchez obviously coming over, Son going over there, Fabregas going over there, obviously coming over to Arsenal as well. It's always been a brilliant connection, and that's probably why I do support them too, because it's like, oh yeah, who are we going to get over from Barca this time? But in terms of like, obviously, with the United, what are your thoughts on United this season? Because obviously I've seen divide in the family, especially recently with some bizarre comments from some of the fan base saying they'd rather lose games to see Ollie out than him actually succeed. How are you taking the season, and what are your opinions on everything?
It's part of my sort of work in football as such. Also, I've got Football CFB that I founded, and in terms of beyond the pitch, I co-host the Manchester United show with them, and they're based in Los Angeles. And and I just seen that comment there about you being a Spurs fan. In terms of United, for me, it's indisputable that the club have improved since Jose Mourinho left and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer came in. I think a lot of people, there's still elements of Manchester United fans that maybe want a sort of A-list manager. When Mauricio Pochettino was available before he went to Paris Saint-Germain, there seemed to be always this temptation that Solskjaer was one defeat away from being replaced with Pochettino, and as you say, some people wanted that to happen. But the way I look at it, if I'm being brutally honest, is under Mourinho towards the end, Manchester United, they weren't really going anywhere. You looked at the attitude and the harmony of the players. Luke Shaw being a prime example. He looked like a player who just wanted to be anywhere other than on a football pitch. There was the incident with Paul Pogba at training where there was the row. It was covered in Sky Sports News. There was just lots of dramas. Alexis Sanchez came in, and Mourinho couldn't get a tune out of him whatsoever. And I know people, and obviously from your Arsenal perspective, you might say to yourself, well, we could see towards the end that Arsenal, he wasn't the same player as what he had when he started. But as I say, when I look at it, I just think Mourinho was not able to get a tune out of the players on a kind of medium-term basis. The Europa League success, the League Cup success, of course, was good. Finishing second, you could say, was some sort of semi-achievement. But people forget David De Gea played a big part in United finishing second that season, and Mourinho obviously likes to just claim that credit for himself. But the way I look at it this season is there has been progress. There's only one thing I would disagree with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer on, and that is that Manchester United need to win a trophy. He said that finishing second is more important than winning a trophy, and I do disagree with that, because obviously Man City have just lost the game at the weekend, and United have sort of closed the gap slightly. I think when you look at it that way, if United can stay within 5 to 10 points of City, then they could call that progress and say, look, we're only 5 or 10 points off. Invest this summer and we'll go again and we'll close that gap. But if they finish, say, 12 to 15 behind City, I don't think you can call that immense progress. You can say it's a level of progression, but a trophy I think is important. The Europa League obviously is the main trophy Manchester United can win this season. But if Ollie doesn't win a trophy this season, he'll go into next season, in my opinion, with a lot of pressure on him. And I think if he finished just top 4 next year and he didn't win a trophy, I think he would be replaced. He's a legend. I love him to bits. I've been lucky enough to meet him in one occasion before, after the game against Watford, which was his first game in permanent charge. And he's a lovely guy, and he's shown that he is astute tactically as well. A lot of people look at him. He's been named a PE teacher. He's been laughed at for certain things, which is very unfair, because he's beaten Guardiola 4 times. He's beaten Lampard when he was at Chelsea. He's beaten Mourinho now a fair few times. Klopp as well. He's beaten the big managers and the big clubs, albeit not consistently enough to go and win a Premier League. But if they invest in him this summer, why can't United and Solskjaer dare to dream?
100%. No, I agree, and I think Ollie kind of shot himself in the foot with the fan base. They might have been slightly more patient if you hadn't made those comments about obviously being second is more important than, which I kind of understand from a footballing point, where consistency will then breed a good mentality. But I think it was a wrong time to say it, especially with both our fan bases, should we say, when a manager does say something a bit should we say, I'd say it's a controversial thing to say, because some people can say, well, if you finish second, third, or fourth, it's the same thing. It's Champions League football, but it doesn't really do much for you. Winning a trophy is ultimately the sign of success and having a winning mentality. But obviously, kind of moving on to that, obviously you spoke about Football CFB being obviously the founder and the owner. How did that come about? Because I believe you're 22, if I'm not mistaken, 23, or am I completely off the mark?
No, you're not off. I'm 25, but I'll take 22 to be honest with you.
You're not much older than myself, and you found an incredible platform, should I say. Obviously, I've been following the interviews and the written, the fact that you do audio written interviews as well. How did that, it must have obviously been something which, how did that come about? Because for me, I'm still baffled that idea exists, because I do love it, by the way.
I think for me, when I left high school or secondary school, I wanted to go and be a sports journalist. That's something that I really did want to go and do. And a lot of family and friends said to me at the time, go and achieve your dream. Yes, of course, strive to do it. But at the same time, is it a realistic dream, in the sense that a lot of media work, with the likes of BBC, ITV, Sky Sports, a lot of the time, maybe it's beneficial to know someone within the industry who can maybe recommend you. And obviously, I didn't have that. None of my family were involved in football media. They were just normal football fans. So I ended up not going and pursuing that dream at university level. I ended up going and working within the public sector, and I've done that now for nearly a decade, and I think I really enjoy that side of it. But my love for football's always been there, and it was towards the end of 2019. I had a bit of a tough spell in 2019, and it was challenging for me mentally for about 8 weeks or so. And when I came out of that difficult time, I thought to myself, I really need to do something. As crazy as this might sound to some of your listeners, my mental health trigger was having too much free time, which sounds daft. I'm not a big drinker. I don't gamble at all or anything like that. But I just found that whenever I had too much free time, I never knew what to do with myself. I'd be the sort of person that would sit and flick channels for 3 hours rather than watch something. I was never able to concentrate and do something. So the idea was to originally just set up a blog and maybe do one article a week talking about the football. But I've always been more of a natural talker than a writer. So I set up the Football CFB as a sort of podcast, and I had the website in the background as well, and interviewed Christian Nadi. He was my first ever guest. Spoke to him. It went well. The audio quality was poor. I didn't have the setup I've got now. And I thought, right, that went well, but how can I improve it? And then gradually I just kept trying to reach out to people I knew within my sort of network and contact base to get them on the show. Luckily, the feedback was positive. And then one of the things you mentioned with the writers, I was inspired by The Athletic. I think The Athletic's an exceptional platform. Yeah. It's brought together so many of the top journalists. You think of David Ornstein, obviously, who's got really good contacts at Arsenal, Andy Mitten, who's got exceptional contacts at Manchester United, Ollie Kay, and so many others. Obviously, I could be here all day mentioning them. But I thought I would love to have a website. Obviously, I own my own website, so I thought I'd love to be able to use that to get student journalists or just generally passionate football fans who want to write or interview people within the game on board. And I started it. I got a few people on board. It started growing. James Rowe, who you've had on recently, he left a previous publisher, and he agreed to come on board as the chief football writer, which was massive for me, because I have huge admiration for James as a person, never mind as a football writer. Yeah. He's exceptional at what he does. And when he came on board, it was amazing, because he's interviewed over 300 professional players and managers. And then with James coming on, I've got some good friends now through doing this within football. Christy Murray, who's the captain of Birmingham City Women and Scotland International. I've got a really good friendship with her, and she said she would happy to come on as a columnist. The former Scotland manager, Craig Brown, the same. I host the Willie Morgan show with Manchester United legend Willie Morgan. So I had a lot of people that were willing to help me and give their time. And if you go on the website, you'll see it does say on the website, look, I don't run advertisements on the website at all, because I want people to be able to write for the website. I want them to be able to do it for the love of writing and for the love of the game. And for me, making money off adverts or whatever isn't the motivation. It's just the love of football. It's the same with the podcast as well. If someone was to come in and say, look, I'll give you X amount of money and you can make this your full-time job and you can do this, fantastic, that'd be great. But the way I look at it at the moment is I don't do it for fame. I don't do it for financial rewards. I literally do it, as James Rowe said when he was on the show, for the love of football. And obviously one day it would be amazing to be able to work at a club like Manchester United, or it'd be amazing to be able to maybe work at the Athletic or something like that. But at the same time, as James has said as well, do it for the love of the game. Treat every interview as the most important interview, and just enjoy it, because we are in a privileged position where we get to speak to professional players, managers, agents, referees, you name it, within the world of football, and it is a position that not everyone is in. So basically, my advice to everyone is, like me, make the most of it and crucially enjoy it, because if you're not enjoying it, then don't do it. It's the same with a job. It's the same with a relationship or a hobby. If you're not enjoying something, don't stick with it. Move on and change. But genuinely, I absolutely love it. And moments like this as well, where you get to speak to other people and they're genuinely interested in what you're doing, it blows me away every time. Genuinely, it blows me away.
No, I echo exactly what you're saying. It's like, I'm not the biggest channel. I've not got the biggest platform, but to get guests on that I have, it's just mind-blowing. And I've always said this to people: be genuine, be yourself, and regardless of what happens, your passion will show through. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an authentic person that people see, okay, yeah, this guy's genuine, I want to work with him. And even with this show, I wanted to kind of bring it out just so people like yourselves can tell the story. Who knows, someone might be watching and I'm even oblivious that they're watching, and it inspires a 10-year-old, let's say, to become the next football writer. He could become the next commentator of, and you never know. And all it is just someone coming on the channel, giving their story and being and giving that belief to them. But obviously you hit on a key word that I really wanted to talk to you about, because I'm an advocate believer of this, and that's networking. For you, is that the single most important, well, I shouldn't say single most, but is that the most vital thing for a content creator or someone who's trying to, let's say, build a football community or even a blog, whether it's football related, whether it's to do with anything in life? Is that the key to you? Like in any form of life, it's networking with people.
I think you said something that resonated with me there as well. I mean, I think first and foremost, be genuine, be who you are, and be passionate, because if you're passionate about what you do, as you've said, people will want to work with you. So first of all, I would say have that passion and have that determination. But yes, of course, networking is very important. And the biggest bit of advice that I would give anyone is make the most of sort of contacts that you've got. When you start, you might know a couple of fellow content creators. Why not get them on the channel and build from there? I think one of the mistakes that people sometimes can make is that they think to themselves, right, I've started this new blog or podcast, I want to go and get Gary Lineker on. Now, I would love to speak to Gary Lineker. I'm sure hundreds of thousands of people would, but he's got 7-odd million Twitter followers. He's the host of the biggest terrestrial football program in the UK. It's probably going to be hard to speak to Gary Lineker. And I think a lot of people need to realise that speaking to people within football, it will take time. You have to build the trust of people within football and even within things like the YouTube community. I mean, if I had never had one interview before and I contacted you and said, would you speak to me? You'd probably want to know who I was, what my aim was, what kind of channel it was. So, as I say, I think you need to be honest and upfront about who you are and what you want to do. And as I say, from there, yes, use your contact base, network, and the best advice I ever got was from Phil Brown, who is the founder of Beyond the Pitch in America, who I work with, and he always just said, look, be patient. Don't set yourself a target of having 2,000 Twitter followers or 100,000 subscribers or whatever it may be, because when you're motivated by numbers, that passion inside you starts to dim. be motivated by enjoyment, be motivated by producing the best program or the best blog or the best article that you can do. Because if you do that, as you've said already, it will organically grow. I mean, for me with Football CFB, for example, when I started, I thought, right, I might get maybe 7 or 8 listeners, maybe a couple of friends, maybe a couple of people I'll just tune in. It's went from there to having over 500,000 people accessing it in over 110 countries. Now, I don't say that to blow my own trumpet. I say that to say to people, look, if I can do that, then you certainly can, because there's no special potion that I had or James Rose got that makes these things magically happen. It's simple things like hard work, determination, as you said, be yourself. And sometimes you have to take rejection and you have to take disappointment where you might book a guest and then they might pull out at the last minute, or you might ask someone and they might just say, look, I don't fancy it, no thanks. And it's important to not see those things as things that can get you down, but just to see those things as experience, because I've had a few experiences where I approached a few people when I started and they said no. And then within 6 months, they came back to me and said, look, I've watched what you've been doing. I would like to be involved. I'd like to come on now. So patience is a big thing. And if you believe in what you do, people will see that and it will organically grow.
No, 100%. And that's the key for me as well. And it's, I had the same situation when I first started. I didn't really know a lot of, well, I should say I barely knew any content creators. Obviously, as far as I got was commenting with them and kind of just interacting on Twitter on their comments. And then obviously they'll follow you. You start obviously messaging and talking and kind of building a relationship. Like, and when I tell you guys, it's a slow grind. What you see here isn't actually just a thing of like, oh yeah, I just asked him today to come on and it was just a 24-hour thing. No, it's all of the work leading up to this, like having the guys like James Rode, Niall from Let's Talk Premier League, talking to Albert, and it's like it's all of that work leads to these moments, and it could take a year, it could take 2 years, and this is the thing, and I think people become so bogged down because they've not got the numbers that other people do. And trust me, it happens to me. I sometimes think, oh yeah, but I just had this guest on and I'm still not growing. And I'm like, that's not the key to me. For me, it's like, I just wanted to bring this comment up and kind of make the comment from it. As a new content creator, it's such a great interview. I'm learning a lot. And that's what it is for me. And it's like, even if I can, like I said, teach one person, even if one person watches this and gets inspired to become the next content creator, and it could be the next big thing, you never know. And that's why I wanted to do this channel and why I wanted to do this show in particular, to hopefully motivate someone further down the line. And because like yourself, Callum, you could have been sat there, like you said, obviously the reason why I started YouTube is similar to why you started it, where because of work was like, well, I've not got a lot for you to do, so you can kind of just chill back. A lot of people would be like, oh, wicked, I'm getting paid and I'm chilling. But I was like, after a bit, I was like, I don't know what to do with myself. Like, I've played enough PlayStation, I've messed around enough, I've watched pretty much everything on Netflix. Now what do I do? But then I was like, I'm talking about football every opportunity I get. Every time I'm on a party chat with friends, I'm like arguing with them about football. I was like, why? Because I'm in Manchester, so everyone that I know is either a United fan, becoming a City fan, and is a Liverpool fan. So I was like, I want to connect with Arsenal fans, but obviously a lot of Arsenal is very authentic to, you know, sort of the London area, and you see the odd few in like Manchester, your Newcastles and stuff like that. But I think with Manchester and Newcastle, there are a lot of like, you either support a United or Manchester club, or you don't support football in a sense. That's kind of the way we were all brought up. But, you know, from me, it's like, with the interviews that you got, like how did they come about for you? And like, was it a strenuous process of kind of just commenting with them like I have, like where I was in their comment sections, I was interacting with them on Twitter? Or was it a simple fact of just everything that you've done has molded you into the person and they've then wanted to work with you? Because James kind of said he's been approached by people because of the work he's done.
Yeah, it's been a mix. When I started, it would be things like you've said, where you would just interact with people honestly on Twitter or whatever it may be. You might then speak to someone on a DM and message them. But as you say, you don't just send a DM and say, "Hi, can you come on my show tomorrow?" Blah blah blah. You would have a normal, natural conversation, and then gradually it might naturally lead to doing a show together or whatever it may be. From there, obviously, I tapped into the network that I had at the start. So there's a footballer called Robbie Crawford who plays in the USL with Charleston Battery. He used to play for Rangers. He used to play for Morton. And I worked with Robbie's brother in a previous job. So because I had worked with his brother and we had a good working relationship, we worked with each other every day, I simply said to him, "Look, I'm starting this up, this project. Do you think Robbie would be okay for me to interview him?" And from there, because we had the personal relationship, yes, of course he would. It got set up. I got to know Robbie well, and sort of off we went from there. So, as you say, it's about networking. In terms of some of the other interviews, maybe the bigger ones, I mean, Henrik Larsson's my all-time footballing hero. I've interviewed him. I had an hour and 15 minutes with him, and I say this to everyone. If I never record another interview ever again, I've still achieved something that was incredibly special to me and something that I never in a million years thought I would do. That took several months to set up. Henrik, as you can imagine, this was just before, it was the week before he joined Barcelona as the assistant manager.
Oh my God, wow, yeah. I remember that whole thing, yeah.
So it was a week before, and obviously he gets lots of requests. He gets asked to do lots of live events across the UK, across the globe, and it was one of those things where you just have to be very patient. And it was a case of, for his interview, it was a case of, right, Henrik will phone you next week on a particular day at a particular time. And then there was the statement that makes you nervous, "Be ready." So it was a case of, I got an email to say, "Hi Callum, Henrik will phone you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. For the interview, and you take it from there." So again, all the prep was done, ready to go. He called, we got it done, and obviously I put the show out, and I'm forever grateful for being able to do that. As James has said, I've been lucky that it's also grown from there to the point where I've had former players and managers approach me and say, "Look, maybe sometimes you find a player or a manager might have a book coming out, they might have a new website they're launching, or in some cases," and people forget this about football for these people is a job. And they love the game. I'm not saying they don't. They love the game and it's their passion, but it's their job. If I used to work in the supermarket Iceland when I was at university, if I lost my job or I left my job, I would probably need to go and look for another job, Sainsbury's or wherever I would go. For these guys and these women, if you leave Hibernian in Scotland, or you leave Arsenal, or you leave wherever, you're looking to get a new club because that's your livelihood. So sometimes I've been approached by a few people saying, "Look, I've just left whatever club they've left. Would you do an interview with me about my career so far? As I think it might help me put my name out there for a new club." And of course, I'm more than happy to do that because that's what it's all about. Or sometimes I'll approach someone who just happens to have been out of contract somewhere and they end up moving on in the summer, and you maybe speak to them again when they've moved to a new club. So it's been a real mix. The networking at the start was very important, still is important now. But it's also sort of transformed to the point where, as James has said, you find now that because of the track record you've got, I mean, like James, I've got over 350 interviews, both audio and written, where people will say to you, "Look, my client's launching a new book in 3 weeks' time, and he would like to speak to you as part of that." And obviously, it means an awful lot when that happens, because sometimes you're speaking to people that have played in the Premier League or have played in Spain or whatever it may be. So it's definitely a journey, and that's something that, as we've said a few times already, people need to realise. You don't wake up on Monday, start your channel, and then on Friday speak to Henrik Larsson. That took me about 10 months, and even in 10 months, that's very quick. Obviously, for a lot of people, that might be years, and some people, it might never happen for certain guests. I mean, I would love to speak to Sir Alex Ferguson one day. Now, the chances are I will never get to do that because, again, he's so busy. He gets so many requests. He's at an age now where he won't be doing as much media as he used to do. But you've just got to have hopes, dreams and ambitions, work as hard as you can towards them, and don't be too disappointed when someone says no. Be delighted when someone says yes, but don't don't, and James and I speak about this a lot, don't go on to say a Twitter or whatever it may be, and I don't mean don't blow your own trumpet. Obviously, be proud of who you are and what you've achieved, but don't rub it in other people's faces, because again, when it comes to that network, if I was to go on Twitter and say, I've interviewed Henrik Larsson, I'm one of the only people to interview him in the last blah blah, people, that doesn't come across well. And if you go to speak to someone who knows him, they might say, the way that guy handled that interview and was bragging about it, I wouldn't work with him. So it's about being humble even when you're having success.
100%, and I 100% agree. And it's and that's the thing, people don't see the background work. They see, like, for example, with myself, obviously I've only been a YouTuber, let's say, or content creator since mid-February, about just over coming to 2 months. And obviously the guests that I've had on for me anyway, they've been the dream to work with, like yourself, James, obviously Kevin Campbell, and obviously the collaborations that I had. And I do want to big someone up in the comments, because obviously he's one of the people who's massively helped me in terms of the thought of networking. And that's Albert, obviously a good friend of yours as well. And he says a very key thing to me all the time: it's quality over quantity. Because obviously even with me, I've been looking at channels who are growing and kind of just taking inspiration from them to see obviously what they're doing, maybe what I could improve on. I watch interviews like yourself and James, just to see where I can improve as a content creator, as an interviewer, and just as an all-round content creator. How important is like the quality of your work over the quantity, or do you think there's a combination of the two?
I think it is all about quality. And just to say on Albert, I mean, just to highlight that, I mean, you're both Arsenal fans, and AFTV is a massive outlet, and I'm not one of these people who has a problem with AFTV or what they do. They've had incredible success, and good luck to them, because it's been grassroots and it's now risen. I mean, Robbie Lyle has talked about doing 3 jobs in the past to now owning a platform that's making millions, and good luck to him. What I would say to yourself and Albert is, what I admire about both of you is it would be very, very easy for you and Albert to try and be like AFTV and try and do what they do to get growth or whatever it may be. But you don't. You do things your own way, and you're authentic, and that's why it will always grow. For instance, with myself, when I started, another piece of advice that I was given, and it makes me laugh because it's very true. Don't pretend you are on Sky Sports, and don't pretend you're Jim White. Now, Sky Sports are a great brand. Jim White is a very successful presenter. But see, if I was to put on a voice like Jim White and I was to try and be like him, I would be very poor, because, quite frankly, I'm not Jim White. 2, he's been broadcasting for 40 years. And 3, he's fantastic at what he does. So it's one of those ones where if you can be yourself, if you can be passionate, you will grow and you will get that growth. And that's where, for me, the quality comes in. Of course, quantity can help. So, for instance, for me in the first lockdown, I was producing a podcast with an ex-prep player and manager every day for about 100 odd days. Now that I look back on that, would I do that again? Absolutely not, because obviously the first lockdown we had a lot of free time in the evenings, etc., compared to maybe obviously working life that's returned now. But I look back at that and I think to myself, there's no way I could keep up with that now. And I think it's about having quality, but also maybe having a structured quantity. So there's someone I know who started something similar in Scotland, and they've been doing lots of shows on a variety of different sports and a variety of different things. And one of the things I said to them when they asked me for some advice recently was, have a set day. So Tuesday, you're going to release a show every week, and maybe Friday, you'll release another show every week. Let everyone know those are the 2 days for your shows, and then make sure you work hard to make sure they're quality shows, because then people get used to it. It becomes part of the routine. They know when to expect it, and the quality is there. The mistakes some people make, and you'll know this as well as Albert will, right, I'm doing really well. I've had 500 views in this video. I'm going to make another one right now. I'm going to make another one tomorrow. I'm going to make another one on Saturday morning and a fourth one on Saturday night. And then they find, that 500 views is now down to 87 because people aren't expecting it and people sometimes can feel bombarded. So I think it's important to, first of all, strive to achieve quality and then maybe structure your quantity so that people know what to expect, they know when to expect it, rather than just randomly saying, I'm putting out a show Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday this week, where people might be thinking, whoa, 4 shows a week, you normally only do one. So that's the way I approach it. I try and structure it so that people know when to expect a show. So normally for me, Football CFB put out a broadcast show on a Monday and they put out a broadcast show on a Thursday. And that's the way we do it. So today, for instance, Pat Nevin, that show's out today. And then on Thursday, Kit Simons, who worked with Chris Coleman in Euro 2016 with Wales, that'll be out on Thursday. And James Rowe's the same. James Rowe will put out an article on Football CFB today. Today it's with Rob Jones. And then on Friday, James will put out an archive piece with a previous guest that he's worked with before, just to give it a sort of second viewing. And that's the way we work it. We have set days and set times for our content going out so that people become used to it and so that it doesn't just become random. Because I think, as you said, sometimes the danger is, wow, that show with Henrik Larsson or that show with Kevin Campbell or that show with whoever has went really well. I'm going to do that again right now and get another one out. Whereas sometimes it's better to make sure it's the best it can be and then put it out at a sort of structured time.
No, 100% I agree, because a lot of people, especially in the YouTube scene, when they hit that sort of 1,000 subscribers and then they have the watch time to get monetized, seem like they up their production, but they don't have the quality, the quality anymore. It seems to be just so much like what they'll do. Say, for example, before they were monetized, they'd have, let's say, a match reaction and a player review in one video, which makes a lot of sense. It's a good way of structuring your video because it's the same thing, but it's in one video and you can combine the two with your thoughts. But then what they do is once they get monetized, they're like, oh, we need more views to get paid, so they'll split the video. But what that does is it becomes too repetitive. It's not a good quality, and I think that's what you're saying in terms of the quantity aspect of it. It's not good because you're going to repeat a lot of the things when you're writing a play. You're going to be like, oh yeah, they made this mistake, but you said that in your all right. He's repeating everything he's saying that he's already said before. So I 100% agree with the structured quantity and then obviously adding the quality into it. That's something I definitely will be writing down because I never thought of it like that. And I think a lot of people who are probably in the chats right now are definitely going to be thinking about that in a different light, especially after the So thank you for that one, because that definitely has got me thinking about how to do certain things.
Well, as I say, if I just come in quickly there, I mean, say for instance, you were going to put out, if you don't know, get to know, and you said that's going to be live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. or every Saturday at 12 noon. Obviously, with the beauty of YouTube and podcasting is the fact that back in the day when we were growing up, if you wanted to watch something, you had to watch it at 8 o'clock. You couldn't record it. But now you can put that out every week at 12 o'clock or every week at 4 o'clock. And there will be a band of followers and fans of what you do who will tune into that because they look forward to that. And then they'll tell their friends about it and it'll grow that way. Whereas, as I've said, I've just found in the past, I used to kind of, I would have, say, maybe 2 interviews for the week, but I'd maybe put one out on a Tuesday night at 9 o'clock, and the next one I'd put out on a Friday morning at 8:30 in the morning. There was no real structure to it. People didn't know when to expect an interview, whereas when I said, right, Monday this will happen, Thursday this will happen, now people expect it, and people say, oh, I'm looking forward to Monday or whatever, and I found the structure to be a big thing. So it's something that I must be honest with you, I had to learn, because when I started, it's something I never really thought about either.
No, 100%. And this is why I do this show, because like yourself, obviously that advice could change someone's outlook on it and actually help them grow even further. And I'm realizing that because it's the shows for me that do a lot better because they're expecting it to be a certain day or time. And And I think that's why a lot of people are going to realize that a lot of their match stuff may not do well. The previews will, because obviously you can have them on the same day kind of thing. Say, for example, if we're playing on a Sunday, I'm going to do them on a Thursday. If we're playing Saturday, I'm going to do them on a Wednesday. People can expect that because it's a bit of a structured there. But obviously, what I do want to bring up is a question from the comments, which is what I was going to ask you as well. And I'm just going to kind of expand on this. And it's from James. Of this, congratulations on your securing a podcast with a fellow YouTuber that I've worked with. So very well done on that one. And obviously what his question is, how does someone get into a career that you're in terms of football writing? Because I believe you said you didn't go to university, which is quite an interesting one, because the mindset of a lot of people will be, oh, you need to go to university. Oh, you need qualifications. Oh, you need to have a level of education before you can even enter the world of journalism, interviewing, hosting, etc. But kind of like on that, like what is the sort of, I'd say, what are the key elements for you, for anyone that's kind of coming into this field?
I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself here, so please bear with me. Again, be authentic, be passionate, be organised. Treat every interview as if it's the same level of guest. I mean, I've interviewed Henrik Larsson, who has won the Champions League with Barcelona, has finished third in a World Cup, is a legend at Celtic, arguably the club's greatest ever player. And I've also interviewed players and managers that have worked in non-league football. I prepared for those interviews the same way, because see, I prepared for Henrik Larsson one way and for someone else another way. People will see through it. So again, the way I would look at it is hard work, determination, consistency, and patience again. Education and the formal route of education is key. I mean, one thing I would say, and I know James Rowe would say this as well, I would never claim to be a journalist. I'm not a journalist. I'm a football writer. I'm a football broadcaster. Those are things that I do. A journalist is someone who has the qualifications, who has the certificate, who can really put their money where their mouth is. I mean, to be a journalist takes a lot of hard work and dedication and education. Just because you're not a quote unquote journalist doesn't mean that you can't succeed in a career where traditionally journalists would succeed. I know that might sound a bit crazy, but when you look at the landscape now, there are a lot of people hosting radio shows or who are guests on these sort of platforms who are not journalists, because, again, they've built up a following from the ground. They've created something like their football blog or a website or a YouTube channel, and it's grown organically. And what I would say about myself, and I know you're doing the exact same in this interview, you're approaching this interview like you're a journalist. When I interview someone, that's the way I approach it. We are doing the best that we can. I never hold my hand up and say I'm a journalist, because I'm not. As I say, I'm a passionate football fan. I'm a football writer. I'm a football broadcaster. Those are things that I do. But never let the lack of a title or whatever put you off. You know, that's the best thing. I mean, again, I've mentioned him a few times. Look at James on the written side as well. I mean, James didn't go to university and study to be a football writer or an interviewer or a journalist. James had, like me, passion for football. He started interviewing players in places in the Netherlands where Dutch people wouldn't even go, as he famously says. And it's the same. It's the same with me. I mean, when I interviewed Christian Nadi, he was playing in League Two in Scotland with a team called Annan Athletic. No disrespect to Annan Athletic, they are a great football club and they've always been very good to me. And I will always take an interest in them because I love Scottish football. But I can imagine if you live in Manchester or London or even Edinburgh, you maybe aren't interested in Annan Athletic and who's playing for them, so maybe you wouldn't approach them for an interview. Whereas, I think the main thing is to, as I say, approach every interview as if it's your last one. Really, the next one's the most important one, and also, as I say, be patient. Don't claim to be something that you're not. As I say, I would never claim to be a journalist because the likes of Andy Mitten and Ollie Kay and Henry Winter, those guys, and I'm trying to, and the other side, Carrie Brown as well. These guys and women, they are esteemed journalists who have been there. They have studied. They have earned their craft, and of course, as I say, I work incredibly hard, and I've produced something that's really good, and it's been incredible for me. But as I say, just remember to stick to who you are, because at the end of the day, you don't want to offend anyone, because you've got to realise it would be like someone claiming to be a teacher or a doctor if they weren't. I mean, teachers and doctors might get pretty offended, so that's the way I approach it. Don't fall into the trap of saying you're something that you're not, because eventually it will rub people out the wrong way.
Yeah.
Just be yourself, do what you do, and do it well, because if you do it well, people will notice. I mean, Carrie Brown, I just mentioned, she is the chairperson of the Football Writers Association. Carrie approached me. I didn't know Carrie personally. She got in touch to say hi. Just to let you know, I've become aware of some of your interviews recently. I think they're really good. Keep up what you're doing, and we can have a chat later in the summer. We spoke last year, and she said, look, I would like to invite you to become a member of the Football Writers Association. Now, again, I don't have a formal background, but my work was in national newspapers. My work was gaining traction, if for want of a better phrase, and it was recognised, and that's the main thing I would say. If you are brilliant at something, or very good at something, or getting better at something, you will be spotted. Your talent won't go amiss, and it's the same in football with players. I mean, if Raheem Sterling's a good example. I mean, Raheem Sterling joined Liverpool. He was at QPR as a kid. Liverpool became aware of him and they snapped him up. I mean, be who you are. Be good at what you do. You need to be patient. I mean, James has been on this journey for 3.5 years. I've been on this journey for almost 2 years. You might not get spotted straight away, but opportunities will come up. So, for instance, we're speaking today. I'm set to be interviewing Terry Butcher, the former England captain, tonight for a company called Football Pass. I didn't apply for a job at Football Pass or anything like that. Football Pass, I'd interviewed a few people who work there in the past, and they'd said, look, you're doing a good job. We need someone else to join our sort of team of presenters. Would you be up for joining the team? I joined the team, and again, that opportunity came to me through the work that I was doing already, you know, and of course, it might not always happen that way, and you might have to reach out to people and network and apply, but do the best that you can do, and you'll be surprised at the opportunities that come your way, and I mean surprised in a nice way, because they will be there for you.
No, 100%, and 100% agree, because it's like, I've always kind of gone with the saying of hard work beats talent, but talent will help you through the ways. And it's a saying that the reason why I believe that is because everyone will have forms of talents, like, you know, whether it's writing, whether it's speaking, whether it's football or sports, you know, everyone will have a form of talent. But if you work hard at something, and if you work hard with your talent, you will succeed. I did want to obviously kind of mention your two other platforms that you work quite closely with, like Beyond the Pitch, and it is, I'm going to get this one right, the Ground Guru, is it?
Training Ground Guru?
Yeah. What are they, and how did you kind of get involved with that for people who may not know?
So in terms of Beyond the Pitch, it's a platform that's been set up in America by Phil Brown. It's been established for 10 years. It used to be on NBC Sports in America and Sirius FM. So it's a very established platform. Yeah. I was a fan of the show. I got in touch with Phil, who hosts the show, and got to know him. And then when I started my journey, he reached out to me and said, look, you're doing well. We could have an opportunity where you could come on board and have the opportunity to do some hosting with us. And I took that opportunity on. In terms of Training Ground Guru, that's Simon Austin runs that. He used to work for the BBC. And Simon worked there for a number of years, set up his own platform. It's about behind the scenes in football. And again, Simon one day reached out to me and said, can I give you a call? And we just had a chat on the phone, and he said, look, would you do an article or two for us at the moment? I did. And we'll see where we go in the future. As I say, with Football Pass, they needed someone to join their team. They asked if I would join, and it was great. And crucially, volunteer as well. So one of the things I did early on was I volunteered for my local non-league club, which is called Greenock Juniors. So I volunteered. They didn't have anyone doing any sort of... They'd someone doing social media and doing it very well. They'd someone doing that very well, but they didn't have someone who would film bits of training or who would do these certain things. So that's where I came in, and that's what I was set to do. So that was something that was very important to do, to give my time to learn my craft there, and that's something that I've tried to always encourage people to do. You won't get everything in the world for free, as we both know. Sometimes you might need to volunteer at a local non-league club or a junior club or an amateur club just to get a wee bit more experience, and then, as I say, use that experience, take it on board, use it to your advantage, and just go on the journey.
No, 100%, and I think you've hit on a very crucial thing. But just before I get into that, obviously I don't want to take too much. Obviously, around the hour mark, I try to wrap these things up. So if you guys have got any questions that you'd love to ask Callum, get them in, and obviously I'll follow up with the question just so people have time to get their questions in. And it's the keyword of volunteering. How important or how crucial was that for you to get to where you are today? And is that something which you would... I mean, I would encourage it, but kind of from someone who's in the position you're in, how key is it to do voluntary work regardless of whether it pays or doesn't pay you?
Well, what I would say is, obviously, Football CFB doesn't pay me any money. Obviously, I've set up the platform, and as I said earlier, I don't run adverts on it. I could run adverts on it and maybe would have a small revenue from it. But the way I look at it, and I know James has said the same when he's on, I want to do what I do and get my work out there and for people to enjoy it. It's not behind a paywall. It's deliberately not behind a paywall, so as many people can enjoy it as possible. And then one day, if someone at a club or wherever wants to say, look, could you come in and do this full time or part time or whatever, then I would consider it and take it from there. Volunteering is very important, I think, especially if you... So James has obviously had a few comments today, and good luck to you, James. I'm sure you will do a great job. You've talked about social media growth, which is hugely important. If you, for instance, want to be a touchline reporter in the Championship or the Premier League or the Vanarama National League, then it's important that you, if that's what your goal is, that you volunteer and do that. I mean, I spoke to Clive Chilsley last year, the lead commentator at ITV for many years, and many of the things that he said and commentators of his era said to me were hospital radio was a big thing for them. They would go and volunteer at a local hospital and they would commentate on a game for the people who were in there. Now, that's changed. A lot of hospitals don't have these projects anymore, but non-league clubs do. And as I say, what I used to do with a non-league club in my area was go along for half an hour a week. At the end, last half hour of a training session, take a few pictures, take a few videos, put them on the club's Twitter and YouTube page, and just go from there. And that's the thing I would say. Volunteering, it's not something you should be expected to do. And if it's not something that would help you, then obviously don't feel pressured to doing it. My main point with volunteering is, if you want to work for a professional football club as a media manager, or as a player liaison officer, or even as a first aider, whatever it may be, it's probably good for you to get some experience to put on your CV before you then go and do that, you know, and that's something that is very important. So I think for me, volunteering can play a massive part, but crucially, those things we talked about earlier, the hard work, the determination, the growing organically, being patient, those things will help you as well. It just depends what sector you want to go into. Like with me, Football CFB is mine. I own it. I'm able to interview who I like within reason, obviously, if they say yes, and I have that freedom. Whereas if you want to go down a different route and you don't want your own platform, you would rather one day work at Arsenal or Oxford City or whoever it may be, then volunteering is going to help you in that journey, because if a job came up at Arsenal or Oxford City or Cheltenham Town, then you could go to them and say, look, you're looking for a media officer. I volunteered for the last 2 years at Fylde, or I volunteered for the last 2 years at Chester or Kidderminster Harriers. And then that's something that's on your CV to help you stand out from the crowd. So it depends how you want to do it. But as I say, crucially, work as hard as you can and you will succeed, because if you believe in yourself and your passion is there, as you said at the start, people will see it and people will hear it. And when they see it and when they hear it, it's very hard to ignore. And that's the same with TV. When you look at the likes of Gary Lineker, when you look at the likes of, as it Jim White's on TalkSport earlier, Mark Pugach on ITV, even when you go to sort of news, I suppose, and you think of Sir Trevor McDonald and the greats of years ago, when you listen to these people, you can tell why they are there. You can tell why they are at the top of their game. You can see it in their face. You can hear it in their voice. And if you can do that at a low level on your own starting, you're only going to build the blocks to gradually keep going.
100%, especially with like non-league football. Like the bigger clubs have already got the brand. They're not looking for you to kind of build that brand for them. They're looking for you to maintain and get that good sort of relationship with the fans. If you can get that with a non-league football where maybe the brand isn't as big or as as prominent, and you've gone and got them, let's say for example you take a League Two or a Champion or a Panorama League team and you make them one of the biggest social followings, that's going to really help you out as well. And it's going to make you stand out. It's hard. Like I've always said to people, a brand like, let's say Arsenal, let's take Arsenal and United, for example. They're a big brand anyway. You're going to go in there not to build their brand, but to maintain their brand. And that's kind of why I always say to people, when you're looking to get there, you need to know what you're doing. Because it's not about the growth for them. It's about bringing content that's going to engage the existing fan base and maybe the younger generation, bring them in to make sure they also follow Arsenal, United, etc., etc. Whereas with the lower league, they're going to give you the opportunity to grow as a person. They may even allow you to make a few mistakes because they're new to this. It's new for them, and they're going to be probably grateful for the service you're offering them, and they're going to give you that leeway that maybe you made a mistake, or maybe, let's say, for example, you bought a YouTube channel for that Pacific team, and that's the innovation that you bought in, and a show didn't do so well. They're not gonna be like, oh yeah, your ideas are crap, get out of the club. They're gonna be like, all right, let's work on this because we're seeing that you're in the right path. Whereas with an Arsenal might be like, oh, for God's sakes, this flopped. We need to now change him because clearly his ideas aren't good enough, and that's obviously what you're going to learn at lower clubs, and they're going to teach you with the experience they have. And also what it's going to do is it's going to get you over the idea of, oh yeah, they're players. Yes, it's brilliant that you're talking to a player, you're talking to someone that's a footballer, but it's going to get you over that notion so that way you start to treat them all the same naturally, rather than and I think that for me that's the key, because I'm just as excited now, like talking to you and James. I was like, even after the stream, I was like, I need to get you back on because an hour wasn't enough. And even with yourself, Callum, I definitely need to get you back on because I know an hour won't be enough. But that's what I try to do, is keep it to an hour, because obviously I'm wary of people's time. But how important is that to you? Like, obviously, is that something which is kind of true to you, where obviously the more you start to interview people, it naturally becomes a thing of, I'm not saying it in a bad way that you're interviewing another footballer, but it naturally comes to you.
No, 100%. I remember the first I interviewed Alistair Campbell, who's obviously not a footballer, a massive Burnley fan, and controversial depending on your politics, etc. But Alistair, obviously, he's a very big presence. He's been probably one of the most famous people in the UK in the last 30 years. Obviously working in government, but I interviewed him about his mental health work, and I remember the night before, that was my first real so-called big hitter, at the point where I was going to be on camera with him, I was going to see him, and I remember thinking, this is going to be unbelievable. Like, I've watched this, I've seen this guy on the news, I've seen this guy all over the world and selling books, etc. And now I'm going to speak to him. And I remember when I finished that interview, the thing that I realised, he's just a human being. Yes, he's achieved lots of massive things, but he's a normal human being. And from there, it helped me big time. So I interviewed Joey Barton. A lot of people say, oh, what was Joey Barton like? Is he like it? And I will say, Joey Barton for me was just, in my opinion, obviously I can only speak how I found him, genuine, honest human being. Gave me 6 hours of his time. It was one of the longest recording I've ever had.
Wow!
We turned it into a series. It was unbelievable. And Joey was fantastic. He stayed in touch with me. He's given me some advice, said, I really enjoy what you do, etc. And again, it would be very easy, as you've said, to like, oh, man, I'm interviewing Joey Barton. Oh, I'm so nervous. Oh, treat him as a normal human being. In that hour and a half or 6 hours, as it turned out to be, he was just Joey. And I was asking him about his time at Burnley, Newcastle, Rangers, QPR, his England cap, and other things. And as I say, the way I approached it was, this is an interview with Joey. I didn't think, oh, it's the Joey Barton who's in the news and in here. Because if you were to put that in your head, it is very easy to think, oh, I'm really nervous and get maybe a bit anxious. Whereas the way I approach it is, as you say, I'm interviewing Joey, I'm interviewing whoever it may be. Once it's over, this is what I found, and you probably found this with Kevin Campbell. Once you've stopped recording, once the camera's away, that's when it hits you and you think, I've just spoke to Kevin Campbell for over an hour about football, and he knows my name now. What's going on? You know, I find for me anyway, it hits me afterwards rather. When I'm on, tunnel vision, I've got the questions, I know what I want to do, it's organised, it's structured. I find it's when I come off the phone or the Zoom or the Skype or whatever it may be, I think to myself, did that really just happen? And then that's when I dwell on it and maybe get excited about it. But in the moment, I try to be as professional as I can, because when you are interviewing these people, it's important that you treat them as normal human beings, because how many times have you seen, if you've been at a football match or you're in a major city and there's a celebrity or whatever spotted in the street and everyone swarms to them and they're so used to that reaction, whereas if you interact with them on a normal human level, you'd be amazed at what you get back from them, because that's the sort of thing that people forget. Joey Barton is a father. He is someone who is an uncle. He's someone who's a cousin. He's someone who's a brother. You know, people sometimes see these people as being front page newspapers, back page, but really they are just normal human beings. And when you connect with them on a human level, as I say, you'll be amazed what you get back.
No, 100%. Even before I did the YouTube thing, I remember working at an aquarium and Kurt Zuma, and I've met other people, but this is the one that always stood out to me. And it was so bizarre because obviously he was with his family. Obviously he didn't have kids or anything at the time. I'm not sure whether he does now either. But it was just him and like his like mom, sister, like cousins and stuff like that. And I remember him coming in and I was like, I kind of looked at him. I was like, he looked familiar. But you know, sometimes when you like, it could be him. And then you're like, oh no, it is him. And I kind of just like, he approached me and we started talking. And he actually gave like half an hour up and he was like, oh crap, where's my family gone? And it was like, because it was so natural. Like, and he was like, I've never really spoken to someone who's just genuinely cares about the person, like rather than, you know, oh my God, you're a footballer. Like that's what people get. Like they get very sort of fancy and crazy about it. And I remember it was one of the most, honestly, Callum, if you get an opportunity to get a Zoomer on, get him. He is the funniest human you will ever meet. I swear to God. This was when he played at Stoke. Hence, obviously, people asking, how did you meet him in Manchester? No, he was at Stoke when he was on loan from Chelsea, obviously, after his injury and everything. So I kind of spoke to him about all of that as well. And I remember him then meeting my sister like a week later at a fashion retail shop. I won't name names because and even there he was like, oh, do you have any advice for me? And my sister was like, oh yeah, you know that guy that you met last week, that footballer? Yeah, I met him today. And yeah, you're right, he's like one of the most like humanly footballers you'll ever meet. And he's like, oh, I really need some advice. Do I get this? What's in trend? And it's like, she was like, you genuinely forget that he's a footballer, and you're like, how he's not a footballer, you're chatting crap to me. And I go, no, he genuinely is. He plays for Stoke right now, obviously, but he plays for Chelsea. And he's like, he goes, wow, he's like the most down-to-earth person. I go, yeah, they're not all, you know, like up themselves, should we say. But obviously, Callum, we are over the hour mark. One thing I do want you to do is give yourself a huge shout out. I don't know why James is thanking you. I'm guessing you followed him back. I have my presumptions, or maybe the advice that you gave. But yeah, you've got a fan there from the channel.
No, as I say, it means a lot. Genuinely delighted to be on. And as I say, you can follow me on Twitter at Callum CFB, mostly talking about football and sharing interviews on there. Football CFB is the platform that I own, and the platform that not just myself, there's over 30 members of the team at Football CFB. And as I say, if you follow me on Twitter, feel free to put in the comments something about what you thought about football that weekend, and have a chat, because as we both said at the start of this chat today, we love football. I talked about playing football in the primary school when I was younger, and that really getting my passion for football, and that's still there. So if you follow me and you want to reach out and say hello, then do it anytime, because I think it's important, as you said with Kurt Zuma, treat each other as human beings. There's so much negativity online and on Twitter. Let's just have a normal conversation. Let's have a laugh. Let's talk about football the way football fans should. And as I say, you can get me on Twitter there.
No, 100%. Obviously, everything in terms of from Callum's Twitter to Beyond the Post, obviously the CFB website and the Training Ground Guru are all in the description. So there's no excuses on you couldn't find it or you got lost looking on Google, because none of that is going to be accepted, because it's all there. So check it out. Obviously, go send some love to Callum on Twitter, on his platforms. Go check it out, because there is some magnificent work. And I'm sure I'm going to get Callum on again for sure, because an hour definitely wasn't enough. There's probably so many more questions. I'm going to get bombarded on DMs with, oh, you should have asked him this. Oh, you should have asked him that. But don't worry, guys. This isn't just a one-time thing. Hopefully not anyway. And actually, I might actually get both Callum and James and my good friend Albert on one channel, because that'll be a really good conversation from people who are in the industry, growing, and are on big platforms now. So if you guys don't know, get to know. This is Callum McFadden. An absolute pleasure to have you on. The advice, honestly, is something you'd pay for. You'd have to buy books to get some of this advice. So do check him out. Go send him some love on Twitter. And this is going to be, if you don't know, get to know. Callum and Souls,